Well, indeed, we're talking about security, and you have already been able to preview our guest. We're talking about how funding for terrorism, I'm sure you must have seen some of the videos that went viral through the course of last week, particularly in the wake of the announcement of, I'm very reluctant to use the word closure of USAID because the status is still very uncertain of what the United States plans to do with it. We know that the Inspector General of the USAID has been fired. We also know that there have been a few revelations, but there are still uncertainties around, some of the programs of the USAID because, yes, much as, things were not, a lot of bad things were happening there, it does appear that it was also there are some good things also happening around it. So even while they try to sort that out, some of the things that we have heard as Nigerians have, been a shocker to us, but perhaps not so much as a shock because just sometime in January this year, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, had granted an international media outfit an interview where he talked about where funding questions were asked as to how it is that Boko Haram, for instance, 15 years on, was still a threat to Nigeria given the amount of work that the Nigerian military had put in. And the response that he gave was quite telling. But let me not speak too much. Let me also let you listen to this, this track from a U.S. member of Congress, Representative Scott Perry, talking about some of the findings they have made from USAID.
We spent $697 million of the taxpayers' dollars in Afghanistan, including $534,719,000 in change from USAID in Afghanistan. I don't know what we think we're going to change in Afghanistan. We lost 22,000, lost or wounded 22,500 Americans in Afghanistan over the course of our term there in the war, spending over $2 trillion. We're just going to keep on spending because somehow we think it's going to get better. And if you're wondering who's in charge of Afghanistan getting the money, and that money I just mentioned, the $697 million is on top of, and is in addition to the weekly to every 10-day shipments in cash of $40 to $80 million. Afghanistan is ruled by folks named Sarajuddin Haqqani. The Haqqani network mean anything to anybody in the room? How about Abdullah bin Laden? Who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding. If you think that the program under Operation Enduring Sentinel entitled Women's Scholarship Endowment, which receives $60 million annually, or the Young Women Lead, which gets about $5 million annually, is going to women who, by the way, if you read the Inspector General's report, is telling you that the Taliban does not allow women to speak in public. Yet somehow you're believing, and American people are supposed to believe, that this money is going for the betterment of the women in Afghanistan. It is not. You are funding terrorism, and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan, because Pakistan's right next door.
Well, you heard what you heard. And I'm sure that, you're still trying to make sense of it very much as we are. But we have here in our studios and also joining us virtually, we have retired Group Captain Sadiq Shehu joining us. You are a security expert. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
We also have joining us virtually Mr. Ohiamen Ohidevie, who is a National Secretary, retired members of Nigerian Armed Forces. He's also the CEO of August I Limited. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mr. Ohidevie, on the program today. I'm sure that you also must have heard that particular track from Representative Scott Perry talking about $697 million, making its way to, maybe all of it, maybe some of it is unclear, making its way to financing terrorism across the world. I think the question a number of people have been trying to ask is, to what end? Why?
Well, thank you very much this morning, Mope. It's a very disturbing topic, okay? But I want you to understand something. You know, there is a permissibility by our leaders and our leadership. Because let me take you back a bit, just to be brief. You remember we have the ECOMOG and the ECOWAS. ECOWAS created the ECOMOG as an intervention force in African countries. The same ECOWAS and the AU handed over the intervention force to the United Nations. One day, all the soldiers were changed to blue berets, and we were now under the United Nations peacekeeping intervention. What happened to ECOMOG intervention force? Okay, then if you look at the viability of ECOWAS itself to coalesce together and put a very active role for African nations between themselves, within themselves, it's not working. Some young countries are taking into military juntas now, and they are breaking away from ECOWAS. So why is it that we don't have an active, positive interrogation of agreements? African countries have good border lines, water lines, and there is no international flight between international Western countries that does not fly over one African country or the other. So we have proper negotiating points. We have the minerals to create the weapons, the power supply. We can interrogate ourselves and have a good negotiation.
Let me come to you, Group Captain Sadiq Shehu. I'm sure that, you know, this, first and foremost, was this a shock to you? Was this revelation a shock to you?
I wouldn't say a shock, but I'm not taken by it.
So no surprises?
No surprise, but I'm telling you, it is an information that is neither here nor there.
Okay.
Just my. So what remains for me is that for the 15 years or 16 years we've been talking, unfortunately, we've not been able to actually identify how Boko Haram gets its funding. There is no concrete, hard evidence to that. So what this Scott Perryman said, if anybody who is conversant with his background, what he has been doing, to be honest, as a military man, there are simply two ways. I think almost all militaries, how you write information. When an information comes, you look at the source and decide whether it is reliable or not. And how do you know whether it was reliable? From past, sayings, past quotations, things that he has said in the past. And then the information also, you look at it, you ask the question, to what end? When you look at Nigeria and US relations, then you try to find the logic. Could it be possible that the US wants to destabilize Nigeria, or the US is after a certain Nigerian leader? We started Boko Haram with late Eradua, through to Jonathan, through to Buhari, and now we're in this thing. To my own understanding, because people used to blame that America has toppled government, that is true, but that was during the Cold War period. And when they did that, it was at the time when there was, a clash between the Western world and the communist world, the USSR then. So they could do that. I am not saying America does not have this thing, but wherever they do, there is a national interest. Either they have a leader who is not towing their line and they want to change him, or they want to upstage China or any of the competitors out of the country. Out of all these leaders that have led Nigeria, both living and dead, I don't think we have any leader that you will see is anti-America to such an extent that America. When you look at trade volume, when you look at relation, I think Nigeria is probably the number one or number two African country that does trade with this. So to me, to come and tell me that Americans, however, in reporting this issue, there is one thing that you media have not been doing. This clip, most people have not listened to it. What do I mean by not listening to it? It is a clip that happened during the hearing at the House of Representatives on the 13th of February. If you had gone further, instead of just picking one line, because that's what you call cutting out of context. To be fair, even to the Perry man, who I think is just a rabble rouser, he used the word inadvertently. Most of our media don't carry that word inadvertently. The whole purpose of that debate is about a new thinking in line with Trump, this saying that America is spending too much money to countries who the politicians in power now believe are not bringing any benefit to America. So it is, a body of politicians who believe that any aid being given by America is like a waste of time. You get the point? That was the mentioning of, even in the clip you said, the mentioning, while in Afghanistan and with Taliban, he was specifically mentioning example of projects that were funded and how the money was diverted. Boko Haram, he only mentioned it in passing, in relation as a sign of this. And to me, I have played this clip back, the whole clip. You have to go further for anybody interested in knowing what the debate is all about. It's not even about terrorism funding. It's about wastage that they think USAID is doing and they want to correct it. But in any case, I do not believe, because when I checked Scott Perry, luckily with the American system, if you want any House of Rep member, if we want to go and lobby, you can easily check and see Maopi as a senator. Why is she representing? What are the things that she advocates for? If you check this Scott Perry man, I will give you examples of what he has been. In 2018, there was a shooting in Las Vegas, and the person was caught, and FBI did an interview and found out that the man was what's called a Lone Ranger. Scott Perry went to town saying that the man is an ISIS man. That is one. And he is also believed to support what is called the Great Replacement Theory. What is the Great Replacement Theory? Scott Perry is one of those who believe that there is a surreptitious plan to replace native-born Americans with immigrants like you and me who japa to that place. He believes in that. He is one of the great leaders. He was, after the invasion of Congress, after that election, there was a move to honor some of the policemen who stood and, protected the building. Perry voted against that he doesn't believe in that. I just want you to see his kind of...
So in other words, you are saying that he's somebody who has sponsored conspiracy theories
exactly
in the past, and as such, you're going to be taking what he's saying with a pinch of salt. Is that correct?
Following it properly from a military point of view. I say, when you get an information, you read the credibility of the source and then the probability of the information.
But when that credibility of the source also happens to coincide with, an interview that was granted by our own Chief of Defense Staff, talking about international conspiracy around Boko Haram funding, can we really dismiss this lightly with a wave of the hand?
Well, I'm talking frankly here as this is my own personal opinion. I watched the interview on channels, and I think one thing I'm happy with, the CDS did not go forward to name any particular country or anything. I still come back to my opening statement. Till now, whether it is a failure, whether it is an inability, there is no credible evidence as to who is funding Boko Haram. Apart from theories, which say, for example, they get it from kidnapping for ransom, they get it from illegal things they do in agriculture or fishing in the Lake Chad region, and also they have members who subscribe money to them. These are the only things that is available. But we are talking of state sponsorship. State sponsorship, that is to say, there is a country which, as a national policy, it is funding Boko Haram. We have tried so many theories, none of them came to fruition. Personally, I follow, you remember, sometimes you will receive a video that there's one Oyinbo man, he landed with a helicopter, he's dropping arms, he's talking with Fulanis. We've had all those of things. But I am telling you, in each of those things, which personally, as a researcher, I follow, it ends up leading to nowhere.
Yeah, you have said that, from what we can trace, or what we have been able to trace are funds from kidnapping, funds from fishing, and those kinds of things.
And people who sympathize with the Boko Haram.
But the CDS was quite clear when he talked about international funding. He said these people are caught with hard currency. So we need to ask, that he thinks that there is some international conspiracy around, the funding. There's some international flow. I think that was the word he used.
Okay.
International flow. When he granted that interview, everybody, the conversation was up in the air, really.
Yes.
We saw
it's still up in the air.
We saw the interviewer trying to say, come on, are you saying that you don't have an idea?
Correct.
And he said, well, he wants the UN, he wants the United Nations to intervene to help trace the source. That was what he said. And then a few months after, this happens, and then we start to hear things like this. Are you saying that no, we should dismiss it because the person who's saying it is not credible? Is that what you're saying?
It's not credible, and since Perry spoke on the 13th of February, still now, there is no official U.S. government, response or even credible. Even at the hearing,
what do you want them to say? To admit and say, yes, indeed, we have
precedents.
We have been using this to spot. Is that what you want them to say?
We have precedents. We have precedents. When the Contragate happened, I can't remember, was it during which president of where it was found out that U.S. was funding terrorists in Nicaragua. There was a congressional hearing. That is how the American system works. A congressional hearing was held until with this, I can't remember, one very famous military man who finally took the fall. This is how the American system works. The fact that nobody said, and even at that hearing, like I said, I invite people to listen to that video to the end.
Yeah, what I want
after the man finished, in the house, nobody supported his.
Yes. What I want to find out from you is why are you so skeptical of accepting or linking these two pieces of information?
I am skeptical using military way of assessing intelligence when it comes in. I have been talking with Maupe. You have brought me 5 stories before, which 4 of them turned out false. It is a scientific lesson. Now you bring a story already in a score of A, which is highest to F. I will put you at D. I'll put you at E or F if you bring any information. And then the information itself, now I look at it. All people have been trying, not only in Nigeria. Terrorism is an international one. There are the researchers that have been trying to find out where is Boko Haram. This theory of United States, because that is what is being funded in Nigeria. When you say USAID is funding, just like that, USAID is funding. Technically, what you are saying is that there is a national policy in the United States.
No, perhaps not directly. And these are really grave allegations. Yes. Perhaps not directly, because let's not forget that Boko Haram was said to have had international connections, with ISIL, something Islamic, whatever, in Sahel. We hear all of these connections. Yes. And from time to time, we used to invite you to come and analyze what are the implications of these new connections we now understand that Boko Haram has. And oftentimes it's about funding. So even if those people are getting their funding directly from some terrorists within the Middle East, and somehow the funds are finding their way, it might not be directly. It might not be, from the operations of USAID in Nigeria. That could be a situation. But can we totally rule it out that somehow, if indeed this funding was going to people, and he mentioned names in some areas, and these people are affiliated, or Boko Haram is affiliated with some of the groups that these people have founded. Can we totally rule it out?
You don't rule everything out. But what I am telling you, as a source, I will rate Congressman Perry as E. That's an unreliable source.
Okay, let me see if Mr. Ohidevies shares your sentiments on this. You heard one group captain, Sadiq Sheh, who said he doesn't quite rate this particular source, and he thinks that we should treat this with a pinch of salt. Is this something that you are willing to treat with a pinch of salt?
Well, I am just one of the Nigerians that is suffering the effects of terrorism. And I am sure millions of other Nigerians that are directly and indirectly suffering the effects of terrorism will be very, very disappointed with these comments this morning. Now, if you want to quote Perry, you are going too far. There is a head of judiciary in Nigeria, Malami. He said he has a list, not suspected sponsors. He said he has a list of sponsors, individuals and organizations. He left without any revelation on that. Now let's move to the current disposition, the sitting CDS, who is also a boss in this environment with applicable access to necessary information. He said there is a movement of items, suspicious items, and there is a vehicle that was transporting certain items to refugees, and the vehicle claimed to have broken down on the road, and before we know what's happening, all the contents disappeared. And a driver was sent to rescue the vehicle. And the driver got there and drove that vehicle back without any mechanical or repair intervention. That is one. Two, he also said that certain amount of money, he quoted a figure that was delegated to supervise the support of refugees, did not and cannot be accounted for in the refugee intervention process. Don't forget that the military is also part of the protective measures for the NGOs under the USAID and the refugee camps. So he must be privy to most of the things that he's saying. If he is not, I think that my honorable co-guest in the studio should be talking to the comments of the CDS, which is current. And if you want to talk about putting people out of context and saying that Western nations are not involved, Western nations have their ministries and parastatals, just like we have the NSA and the DSS, EFCC, you know, most of their covert operations, local and international, they don't do it as a government. They do it as a parastatal, as an institution that will exist from one government to the other. So if you say there is no reaction from the US government also, why is the current president, Donald Trump, giving this other colleague and partner in reviewing and revamping the US government, why is he now the one telling the USAID staff to leave the office? You know, why are they being settled? And even the judiciary here for the USAID issues, they have said that the staff don't have a case, that they should answer to the queries. You know, so if within Africa, we have vocal and radical speakers like my co-guest defending anomalies that is affecting the citizens of the country, then you will see why we have a global mandate in our hands, that there are failed leaderships within African nations that cannot negotiate positively for the betterment of the people. I disagree totally, but I want to disagree respectfully, because I don't want to look at we are countering anything, because most of the things that he is giving to us right now, the alternative negatives are in the news. It's not something that you need to predict. And if you say you are giving Perry that quantum of assessment, we are not even looking at Perry's statements. We are the victims right now. Africans, Nigerians, we are the victims. And most of the people that suffer most are military personnel that have died in the hands of Boko Haram and terrorism. And he's a retired military officer. And military personnel, they are the ones in the camp, in the de-radicalization camps. And they tell you that the processes of de-radicalization is also to recycle these people back to the society and reintegrated. Because if I've been de-radicalized, you can't stop me from belonging to any other thing. I've been cleared. That's what it means, you know. So if we have this kind of defense mechanism for people to come and say the processes of getting their weapons, getting their financing is local, because that is what he's saying, that they get it from ransom, they get it from taxing farmers and mineral resources. Then if you know this much, what have you done as a presentation to create a deterrence for this their funding, local funding measure? I think we are missing out on something here.
Go to Ayo, because I know you want to respond, Group Captain. I know that Ayo will bring the question to you, so let me go to him. Ayo.
Actually, it's a good place to have you respond, Group Captain, because as Mr. Ahmed said, Scott Perry is a retired soldier. He was in the army for 39 years. and he rose to quite a length. And one would say, to an extent, he has some pedigree. Oh, yes, you are right. There are reports that he has made some contentious statements as the president of the United States himself. And we all know that the Democrats and Republicans in the United States of America always have an opinion that are hardly ever the same about the USAID over the years. But does it negate the facts? You said earlier that as a country, Nigeria has struggled to find out the funding of terrorist activities in the country. The former President Buhari has also said repeatedly, let's try to follow the money. It's been difficult so far to follow the money. The question is why? And there are several efforts that have been made to put all terrorist activities in the country at bay to little impact. So, and of course, as it has also been pointed out, Nigeria's own CDS has made comments that suggest that some of the terrorist activities we're having in country are from external influences. So, Group Captain, do you want to respond to those?
I really want to respond because my co-panelist has actually tried to push me to the boss. But first I have to say, when I'm looking at security issues, I'm not a man of emotion. I'm not a man of sentiments. I look at facts. I look at the research that I have done. I still stand that Perry, whether in America, is somebody who is known to make such flippant statements, not only concerning Nigeria, concerning so many issues. If somebody is used to bringing statements which are not borne out by fact, as a military intelligence circle, process, you have to mark down such a source.
Group Captain, perhaps the issue, just 1 second, if you can hear me. Just a second, if you can hear me. Just 1 second. Perhaps the issue, can we look away? Can we look away from, just a second if you can hear me, can we look away from Representative, the Congressman Perry, and look at the issues? Because there is a temptation for us to be distracted by the individuals in an issue and leave out the issue and the substance of it. So let's focus on the issues. Some of the comments he made, rightly or wrongly, just a second, rightly or wrongly, Nigeria's own CDS, Markwe referenced this earlier, spoke on another platform, on an international platform, just like Channel Television, and has made some comments. The former president of Nigeria has also made some comments that suggest that these guys can't be, it's not possible for them to be funded by poor people. They have to have some heavy bags. So let's look at those issues, the issue of funding of terrorism in Nigeria and how it has debilitated progress in particularly the northern parts of the country.
Thank you very much. My understanding in this issue when I was invited is predicated on the fact of Perry's interview that USAID, that is what is in all most Nigerian media, the USAID. So when I'm answering with particular reference. What is it implying? That there is a United States policy of sponsoring. That is the issue I am addressing. Now, having said that, I would like to say that, again, like I was saying before you stopped me, the fact that somebody has expressed an opinion with due respect does not stop me as a researcher or as an expert in my own right to also propagate. I will definitely look at what the CDS said. I will definitely look at what a president said. But again, that does not, by way of my training, that doesn't mean then I will automatically align with what he said. If I have a temporary opinion, I'm somebody who is never afraid to say what I think about an issue. I may not be right. But you are asking me, you invited me here. So others are throwing to me that this one has said so, this one has said so. If I don't think I have, if I don't think I have a contrary opinion, I will not even come for this interview. So I am telling you, on the research that I did, based on as of today, there is no single authority that corroborates what this man said. And here, when my co-colleague was bringing about people that were arrested during Malami or during Buhari, that is another different issue. The issue here is USAID, and I think that is what disturbs many Nigerians right now. That's so, that is the thinking. So America has been doing, again, I have to say that since we started, unfortunately, this Boko Haram incident, that's about 15, 16 years, there has been so many conspiracy theories. I will not be flippant to mention names, but the initial information was that Boko Haram is being sponsored by a former governor of Borno State. We left that. Later on, there was a theory. That time we were not even chummy with France because of the geopolitical area. The thing moved to, it is France. After that, we started getting video clips. An Oyinbo man has been seen dropping weapons. What I am telling you, whenever there are such incidents, as in my own personal capacity, I follow those things to the end. And I still stand as of today, as I'm talking here this time, till now, there is no concrete evidence. Now, let's even assume what you said. And when you talk about international connection does not automatically mean that another country is there. If somebody is in the diaspora and he's sending money, that is international connection. But when you bring USAID into it, my own understanding is that there is what is called state sponsorship. State sponsorship, that is to say there is a government of a country that is this. But I am telling you, from my own research, up to now, all these conspiracy theories of this country is doing that there is no concrete evidence. Saying there is no concrete evidence is different from saying that I said it is not true. But there's no concrete evidence. And I think the more we believe in this kind of theories, the more we are tasking our DSS, our military DIA, our police, all our security agencies. If for the past 16 years, they should put in more effort to this. My understanding of the interview with the CDS is that he showed surprise as to what is making Boko Haram tick for 16 years. I think, this is my own assessment, he stopped short of saying that Boko Haram is receiving funds from so and so. As to the issue of the people that were caught during Malawi, again, is another pointer. There's so much little information about that prosecution of people. But still, it is far away from USAID and the American government.
Okay.
Further still, in such things, there have been instances where some governments of some countries have accused some countries of fomenting trouble in their district. What do? They take the issue to the United Nations and lodge a formal complaint. One good thing about since this thing started that I observed, since this thing came out, federal government has not made a pronouncement on it. And I think that is very good. Because to be honest, as of now, if federal government should make any pronouncement on what this Perry said, they'll be making a very big mistake or making a pronouncement or something that is flimsy. I still come back to the fact that even in the House of Reps in the US, there is any other single lawmaker that corroborated what Perry has said. If you can Google Scott Gordon Perry and see the kind of person. He has made a name of himself of bringing this. I started this one by telling you the kind of theories that he propagates.
Captain,
and his theories now, they align. What is concern of the Trump administration now is that they want to cut wastage, which I don't blame them.
Group Captain Shehu, just 1 second, if you can hear me.
Yes.
But the president of the U.S. Implemented a 90-day freeze on foreign assistance. Where do you think that initiative of the president of the United States of America could have come from if there is no iota of truth in the revelations that have been made? Even the president of the United States of America himself have made statements about this same USAID.
Okay. Permit me to answer you by saying, for everybody who knows, Trump and politicians like Perry, they belong to what is called right-wing conservative Republicans. What is the belief of key beliefs of right-wing conservative? They believe in strict immigration policies, among other things. They believe in nationalism and America first, which aligns with we hear Donald Trump. They are opposed to foreign aid and globalist approach. That informs they are clamping down on USAID. That informed their decision. They even believe in globalist organizations like the United Nations. That's why you see the first week, Trump again said that he's going out of World Health Organization. We don't even know whether he will pull out of the United Nations and the rest. So these are political beliefs, and I want Nigerians to know they should read on this.
So how do these
this debate to me was
just a second. So how does this allegation made by the President of the United States of America and Scott Perry and perhaps maybe one or two other persons, how does it help the image of America? How does it promote America first? Because people will be looking at America now, I mean, I stand to be corrected, as one that does not keep its promises and that can just capitulate on any issue at the slightest instance from any government.
The way you are talking now is what a Democrat or any other person who is a Republican but not a right wing would look at it. And certainly, even as we are talking now, there is that debate. And the issue of closing or stopping, like Boko started, of USAID is not a concluded debate. Because even within the Republicans, even within the there are people who believe that the continuation of USAID is part of United States national interest. So it is not a closed debate. And even as we are talking, again, like Boko said, it's not that USAID has stopped completely operating. As we are talking now, they look at programs one-on-one and they give waivers to some programs. They are still continuing. You can check that. So the point I'm making, that is your opinion. And even America, there are people who believe that even though America is sending money to these countries, there is some benefit. That it's just like Nigeria and ECOWAS and the ECOMOG that my colleague mentioned. We will send a lot of money. There is a debate if you raise it in Nigeria. Some people will tell you, just like the right-wing Americans, that it was purely a waste of money we did in Nigeria.
All right. Group Captain Show, sincere apologies because we're running out of time. But let me take Mr. Hiram's comments as well. The focus for me in this conversation is not comments, just questions. Do you think this helps, Mr. Hirame, our drive to at least follow the money, if we can put it that way, and be able to track down terrorist activities or funding of terrorist activities in Nigeria? Do you think it gives us any pointers?
I'm very, very amused this morning, and I'm seeing a lot of theories being accepted to be practicalities on ground. I'm seeing us going back to the class, checking our iPad and all the documents in front of him and converting those to practicality on ground. Now, if we look at the constraints of countries, okay, we know that Nigeria is owing thousands, billions, and trillions of dollars to this country or to that Western country, or to aid being an enabler in so many things that we do, a relationship-based enabler. Now, we also know that when you want to permutate the possibilities of influence, you will look at the activities of the suspect organization. The CDS, whom he is running away from talking about, did his own research. He said that these same people pay up to 10 years lease for properties, 10 years lease for an intervention that you hoped that will close within the shortest possible time, because Nigeria is the giant of Africa. So if you pay a 10 years lease for properties, what are you appreciating to happen within that 10 years? Let's come down again to the possibilities of movement of funds. I and you know that there are times that these governments have discovered movement of weapons, and we don't know the end of those cases. It was shown on television, not social media, like he is saying. We also know that certain amount of money have been found in certain buildings or offices in this country, and we don't know the end of such cases, you know. So if a CDS is speaking in an event organized by the DSS and the CDS is speaking, and this my brother here is saying that they are all in assumptions, I wonder where we are going to head to, because the solutions must come from the suspicion and the assumptions. And if we have all of these researches that we say we have been doing, where is the document stating the ABCED of steps to take to curb such opportunities for terrorism to continue?
So what do you want us to do, if I may now, what do you want us to do moving forward with this, you know, bits and pieces of information? What do you want Nigeria to do?
Thank you very much, Boko. You see, we should be talking about solutions. Number one, we need to strengthen our judiciary. In America here, if the presidency or the president cannot do any of his executive order, the judiciary steps in. You know, we need a judiciary that can question and can answer to petitions. There are petitions that have been written by individuals to our judiciary stating suspicious activities. We also need a strengthened and cohesive intelligence agencies coming together, bringing all of their bits and bits together, and talking to people like him too, to say, what are your researches that you said you have done? Can we have documents?
I'm going to have to stop you there. So, Group Captain, what should we be doing now while you also respond to some of the things that he's raised?
Already.
You have 1 minute.
It's not that Nigeria is not doing anything. Like, for example, Nigeria is in the Egmont group, where we do this National Financial Intelligence Unit, which tries to trace this. And having worked with Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, I know for any NGO that comes in, they go to multiple Nigerian agencies to register. For example, you go to
National Planning.
Yeah. You go to DSS. You go to even EFCC. And when you are going to Borno or Adamawa, when you go there, you do another registration. When you are going into the field where the military is working, also the military, in fact, the military has a good decision. They started appointing humanitarian affairs officers who will follow and do. So maybe we are not doing it as much as we should do. That is what we should be doing. But again, I come back to the fact that I think, again, if for example, we assume what my colleague is saying, if we assume that this what this man said is true, again, it's not that Nigeria is helpless. Nigeria is a rough sovereign country. When such things happen in the past, and a country suspects another country, they take the issue to the United States.
Do you see a role for the National Assembly? Because Senator Lee Ndume was saying we shouldn't just leave this line low.
Yeah, for the purpose of calming the nerves of Nigerians. It is for that I will, I will recommend that maybe an inquiry is done. But then, when that inquiry is done, that is where all we are discussing here will come to fruition. Is there specific we can follow? But I still end this discussion by saying, as of now, we do not have any evidence of state sponsorship of Boko Haram in Nigeria.
Well, gentlemen, we have to thank you very much for your time. We've been speaking with retired Group Captain Sadiq Shehu, and also Mr. Ohiamie Ohidevie, who is the CEO of August I Limited. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.